Okay, so hello everybody. My guest today is somebody that you absolutely want to know, Paul J. Jordan. Paul's been in digital marketing for over 20 years and is the founder and director of Learn Digital Marketing, where he's built a reputation as a webinar funnel and online events expert. He's got a background in engineering, project management, and tech, and he's turned that into helping coaches, consultants, and service-based businesses to scale using webinars that convert. He combines cold, hard marketing strategy plus a flair for human connection. So you don't feel like you're being sold, you feel like you're being spoken to. And today we're going to get into his story, the how behind winning with webinars, and most importantly, the pragmatic things that you can take away if you want to run webinars or to up the game on your existing ones. So, Paul, thank you so much for being here. Shall we kick
Awesome.
off?
Thank you very much for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So I'm looking forward to this because I am a self-confessed bit of a technophobe. So it'd be nice to hear it in nice and easy ways of understanding. So, Paul, let's start by going back to your beginning, first of all. Could you just walk us through your journey from engineering and tech into digital marketing and webinars?
Yeah. My originally my degree was in electrical and electronic engineering, but I stepped into programming when I sort of left uni. And from programming, I really enjoyed that. I got into project management, fulfilled various roles in the corporate world, and then I've been made redundant more than once, and for various reasons, companies that were doing really well then folded. And it happened, I think the last time it happened, I was really furious because I put my blood, sweat, and tears, as we all do, into the role. And I decided to take control of my own destiny. And I realized that, IT, all the programming skills, the project management skills, all really useful transferable skills into the world of internet marketing. So I set up the company several years ago and haven't looked back. And of course, when you're in control of your own destiny, nobody can make you redundant, nobody can sack you. Yeah, you're in control of your own life. So it's hard at the time, but I'd recommend it for everybody, really.
Yeah, me too. But the worst thing about it is the boss, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
The best thing and the worst thing about it is the boss. Yeah.
Yes.
So no, that's a really interesting transition into um, that side of things because I suppose it's a misconception, but I think a lot of people are out there thinking a stereotype of techie people then going into things like marketing, which is much more peoply. It doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a um, one of the most obvious routes, shall we say? So it's nice to hear about your journey there. And what was the turning point when you decided, right, do you know what? I need to create winning with webinars specifically.
Yeah, that's a good question as well, because I think I'm trying to think when exactly it happened. It's probably about 18 months ago. I was contacted by a coach. I forget who it was now, who the first person was. I remember my clients very well. But I think it was a lady who wanted to run webinars, realized they're very powerful. And she said, no, she sat down, tried to set one up and gave up because it was just too, she just felt overwhelmed. And in fact, the word overwhelmed is one that comes up a lot in conversations I have. And then shortly after that, I was approached by another coach, someone completely different type of coach, who also wanted to do a webinar. And again, this person recognized they're very powerful. You can get in front of a bigger audience, etc. Same story. Sat down, tried to set one up, didn't know where to start. And if on some of my testimonials, it's quite interesting because I've got one lady in Germany, and she said it was 2 years. She'd been wanting to do webinars for 2 years and never actually got round to finishing it off because she just got overwhelmed. And there's another lady got stuck for 9 months. But anyway, it was quite interesting how the universe sends you people, because there was a succession of coaches. There was a relationship coach, there was a Bitcoin coach, a weight loss coach, a business transformation coach. What other coaches was there? There's a lifestyle coach. Um, I forget all the different. They're all coaches, but all completely different sort of genres of coaches, should we say? And they all wanted to do webinars, and it was almost the same story from all of them. They procrastinated, didn't have the confidence, got camera shy, bit of a technophobe. So I sort of stood back from this, having sort of set up webinars for all these people very successfully. I thought, gosh, the universe is telling me something here, Paul. There's a demand for people that want to run webinars but don't know where to get started. I know, I'll create a program. So that's where that came from. And here I am sometime later, just in the throes of putting together our Rev 2 course, because in that time things have changed. We've got AI and so forth. I've learned a lot. But we're upgrading the whole content of the course to be the best that it can be.
Fantastic. I definitely need to have a chat with you about the course as well, because webinars is something that I've wanted to add into our both our marketing and our service delivery, and haven't done for exactly those reasons. Got no
Oh,
idea where to start, and then go, I haven't really got time to work all this out on my own. So we definitely need to have a chat after
yeah,
this.
I'd love to help you for sure.
Fantastic. Now you've mentioned there a lot of coaches, and you've helped many coaches and service-based businesses to use webinars to scale. So, what's the biggest mistake that you see newcomers make, and what advice would you give for them to avoid it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a really hard one to answer because I think people make a lot of mistakes. But I think the fundamental one is that if we forget about all the tech, if we just look at the presentation, which is the core, that's what the webinar is all about, is actually delivering a presentation. I think it's that they do not know how to structure a presentation to actually grab the audience's attention and to lead them to a conversion at the end of the webinar. And that conversion might be booking an appointment to have a phone call, or it might be actually selling something. And when I say selling something, it's usually selling a service like a coaching program or a relationship management program.
Mhm.
It can be used for physical products, but I don't really, that's not something I kind of specialize in. So I think fundamentally, they don't really think about structuring their presentation in a way that paves the way towards a conversion at the end. So I think that's the biggest mistake. They don't give it any thought.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do that, don't they? Not starting with the end in mind.
Exactly. They
So,
kind of, people sit, and I admire anybody who runs a webinar because they do take a bit of effort. So I do admire everybody that gets started with one. But they might tell a lot about their course. They might talk a lot about themselves. Um, but the way I think the word webinar's got a bit of bad press as well because we think, oh no, not another webinar. It's a bit of a dry
mm,
name, isn't it? So I say to people, first of all, don't use the word webinar in your promotion. Call it like a masterclass or a workshop or a boot camp or
mm.
whatever. The webinar is just a tool. It's just a platform. It's not the name of what it is that you're doing because I think that's a bit of a deterrent. But also when people, those first it's a bit like an advert, isn't it? The first 3 seconds are the hook. So if you
Yeah.
open your webinar with energy and passion, rather than opening the webinar and saying, "Oh, hello, my name's Fred Blogs and I'm from blah blah," it's like, people don't want that. We're in a low attention world. You've got to hook people's attention really quickly, and there are special techniques to do that when you open the webinar, so that you get the audience not so much on their back feet, but you get the audience to put a bit of work in right away
Mm.
instead of them sitting back and just sort of watching you. You've got to open it, and those first 3 seconds grab their attention, get them involved, and then you've got them hooked, and they're much more likely to stay to the end. So there's lots of techniques and methods to use throughout the presentation to engage the audience, to build up the trust. So it's creating a thoughtful presentation. That's the biggest mistake that people don't do. They just they think they're going to write content about everything that they know or give lots of value, which is fine. And that can be done if it's mixed in with all the right structure to get the result at the end. So and I've learned that through experience and wasted time and pain and effort. I've done hundreds of webinars. I went on a public speaking course to learn about all this stuff. So I've got a lot of good knowledge now. So that was a long answer to a short question.
Yeah, but it's really, really great sound advice, actually. And and you did mention as well there that people quite often don't have that end piece where it is, coming into the sale. We all know that our businesses grow by making more sales. So when a business is growing, where do webinars or online events fit into that growth engine?
That's a very good question as well. I think so. Initially, I'll answer that indirectly. So I think initially, when people run webinars for the first time, they need to do them live, and they need to do them live many, many times so that they can refine them, optimize them, change them. Because every time they run a webinar, they'll get a bit of feedback, and then the next webinar they can run will be even better. But there'll come a point when their webinars are running really well, they feel good about it, they're confident, they're getting results at the end, and that can then be recorded and set up as an automated or on-demand webinar. And that's when the real power comes in, because that means that it frees up the person's time. The webinar is running automatically in the background. That person has more time to devote to other aspects of the business. And once it's scaled up, depending on, providing they've got the capability to deliver and fulfill on their product or service. Obviously, if it's a physical product, they've got to worry about having enough of those products to be able to ship. But if it's a service that they're doing, maybe an online coaching program or something like that, then fulfillment is pretty easy because that can all be done automatically. And if you kind of got the kind of product or service that will appeal to a global audience, an English speaking audience, if it's like a training program perhaps, then the sky's the limit. If you can scale up your ads and just throw a lot of money at advertising online, on Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, YouTube ads, according to where your audience is, then you can sell that product forever to a global audience. And
Yeah.
there's 7 billion people in the world. There's probably at least 1 billion potential prospects out there that are in the right kind of niche. So that's how it can fit in really well, I hope.
I mean, the potential is absolutely phenomenal, isn't it? I
Yeah,
do know several coaches and course and content creators in one of my mastermind groups who are driving literally tens of thousands, and in a couple of cases, hundreds of thousands.
yeah,
And and this is per month, some of them.
mm,
And there's a guy called Lewis Crompton, for example, I know, who does like online trading and coaches people in trading. Lewis is great. And he was saying to me, Bish, webinars, that's how we launch it, that's how we get out to people. So I think the importance of getting it right and doing it right, like you said, the impacts that could have on your business is absolutely phenomenal. So,
yeah.
in terms of getting it right, what tools, structures, or frameworks do you lean on to ensure that a webinar runs smoothly, from kind of planning to tech to follow up?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. And I think when I first started doing webinars, I made all the mistakes under the book. And because there are so many components to webinar, if we look at all the different aspects of what a webinar consists of, because everyone's got a different definition of that. So my version of a webinar, I'd probably call it a webinar funnel. So you have your source of traffic, which could be paid advertising or social media posts, organic, or both of those. You've got the webinar platform itself, which is the actual platform that delivers the video to the audience. You've got your email platform. So your email does all the reminder sequence to remind people to come to the webinar. And then it nurtures people that didn't convert. So you have an email sequence to keep people in touch with you and add value. And eventually they can maybe come back and convert, make a purchase from you in the future. Then you've got the video, then you've got the presentation slides, all of those things together. So because there are so many components, it's wise to have a checklist. And I evolved a checklist over many, many months of all the different components that have to be built. You have to build a registration page where people put their details in to register for the webinar. You need to have an offer page so that at the end of the webinar, there's a web page where people can actually buy something. Then you need to have a payment system so that they can put their credit card details and buy your product, or maybe a calendar page where they can book an appointment. So you have all these different components. So I think you have a checklist with all these different things on, and then you can make sure that you deliver them all, and then it has to all be tested thoroughly. So I would say the checklist is probably the most important thing because it makes sure that you do things consistently. But there's another checklist as well. That's a checklist for building a webinar, but I'd also have a checklist for presenting the webinar. So the checklist before you actually deliver a live webinar, it'd have things like go to the bathroom so you don't get caught short halfway having a talk. Look in the mirror to make sure there's no cabbage stuck in your teeth. Um, Make sure you've got your microphone working and all your tech is working. Make sure your phone's in flight mode so you don't get a disturbance. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can check before you go to the live webinar so that you know that you're going to have a relaxed experience, everything's ready to work. So that's how to do it, I would say. Those are the two key things, having some good checklist procedures.
That's fantastic advice. And also, I think the humble checklist isn't as humble as we think it is. And so many people don't use it. People go, well, I know what I'm doing. I don't need a checklist. I'd like to think that surgeons and pilots know what they're doing, yet they all use checklists, don't they? And much like you've described, that sort of pre, during, post-op, post-flight, whatever it is. So yeah, absolutely. And that sounds like an awful lot of moving parts. So,
Yeah.
which makes it really obvious why it's just a lot easier to go, Paul, can you
Yes.
just show me how to do it? So now if somebody is on the fence and thinking, oh, should I bother doing webinars? That sounds like a lot of faff, or should I focus on other marketing? How would you decide who should use webinars and when it's a good time to introduce
Yeah.
them?
Well, I think with many businesses, especially with, I mean, coaching is just one of many good examples, but therapists, lawyers to some extent, where the brand is the person who's delivering the service, they work really, really well. I think they work less well for people that are big corporates. That's not to say they won't work for big corporates, because it depends on what it is they're selling. If they're selling like a SaaS product, then the webinar can be great. But where you've got the owner operator who is the person, they are the face of the business. They are the life coach. They are the relationship coach. They are the therapist or the anti-smoking coach. When they're selling themselves, then webinars are great because they can get in front of their prospective audience very, very well, and they can get in front of a lot of people really, really quickly. And the other powerful thing, of course, is that I'm going off a bit of a tangent here, but in the world of marketing and buying stuff, I think we all recognise that if we're on Facebook and we see a phone case that looks really swanky and you think, oh, it's only 10 quid, I'll buy that. It's a no-brainer. But if it's like something that's £500 or £1,000, it's not necessarily an impulse buy. And when we're buying something like a coaching program or the like, or a relationship program, we're not just going to do it quickly. We want to sort of get to know that person, find out more about them. And it's generally recognized that we have this thing called a user journey, which consists of different touch points. And a touch point is like how you encounter somebody online. You might see a TikTok video, you might read a LinkedIn post, you might attend a webinar. So every time you have that touch point, you're adding a little bit of credit into the value of credibility and trust. It's like a bank account where every time you have an encounter, that little bit of trust is added and your trust is growing and growing. But in a webinar, if you've got 45 minutes of watching somebody and interacting and asking questions and hearing their voice and seeing their body language, that whole bank account of trust goes up massively in that space of 1 hour. So they're really powerful for people that are delivering the service themselves, where their face is the brand of the business. That's who it works really well for, Sarah.
Yeah, do you know what? That's really interesting, Paul, actually, because I come very much from a sort of sales and business development background. Those touch points and the things I can remember way back in like the Jurassic era when I was doing sales training, that it was like, oh, you need about 5 touch points before somebody's going to buy, make a decision. And then, latterly in my career, it was like, oh, 11 points. And now I think it's something like between 19 and 27 touch points before somebody is likely to buy, because we've got all these billions of bits of information, haven't we, sort of bombarding us all the time. And it's really interesting that you say with the webinar you can increase that trust. And as you were talking about it, I thought, actually, do you know what? That makes absolute sense, because so many of us, we watch TV. You're on your own little TV screen, aren't you, in a webinar? And we watch TV and we think we know these people. We think we know the actress, actors. We think we know the politicians and what they're like, and we don't really, do we? So that just makes complete sense when you put it like that. It was like, oh, of course, that's such a brilliant way to kind of fast track on these touch points and get that trust and that feeling that people know you.
Very much so, because I've got a table somewhere that actually kind of gives a value to every touch point. So like a phone call has a value. I don't know how many, I think it might be 5 points of value. A human interaction has obviously a lot more credits in a trust bank. An email has a bit of value. Watching a video has a bit of value. So there's a difference. Someone's done a scoring system, so they give points to every kind of encounter that you have. And it's shown that webinar only seconds a human actual face-to-face encounter in the same room. The webinar is the one that earns the biggest amount of trust and authority because of the time you've spent with somebody, but also the interaction that you can have. It's very, very
Mm.
powerful. You can build up in a space of 1 hour, you can build up the trust that would otherwise take weeks with all the other mechanisms to gain.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes absolute sense. Now, I've got my recruiter head back on a little bit. So, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you think, actually, do you know what? It's really important that somebody either starting out with webinars or thinking about doing them needs to know?
Yeah, I think firstly they take time and effort. If you think of anything online, like people run adverts for the first time, they don't get the result they want, and they think, oh, the adverts don't work. But the nature of anything online, the nature of marketing in general, is that you have to try things out. And I say to people, your first webinar won't be your best webinar because you'll be learning how to run the tech, how to speak properly, and all that stuff. Your second webinar is not going to be your best webinar. Might be a bit better than the first, hopefully, but it takes many, many attempts. And I'm talking tens, not two or three. It takes many, many attempts to get a webinar that's going to be really, really successful in terms of getting the conversions. Having said that, you can't predict it. I had one guy, the lifestyle coach, a chap called Garth. Um, as soon as I kind of got to know him, I could, he had a natural kind of confidence on camera. He was really good. He had a bit of charisma. And I was absolutely astonished. The first webinar he ran, he actually got someone who bought a coaching program that he ran. I was like astonished because that does not happen ever, ever, ever. But he did it because you never can tell. It could be the second webinar or the third webinar. So there's lots of variables. It depends on how hard they work, how much they rehearse. Because rehearsing is part of it as well.
Mm.
Not just standing in front of the camera for the first time, but it's like an actor. You learn your lines. You go and rehearse it many, many times. So I think setting expectations and accepting that, okay, I'm going to have to stick at this and I'm going to get better and better and better. And I know that after 10 webinars, I should be getting results because Paul's going to help me optimize the landing page and the attendance and all of that. Because there's all those different variables to get right. You want to get as many people to register. You want to make sure those people that registered turned up by having a good reminder sequence. You want to make sure that when they get there, they stay on the webinar by having an engaging webinar. So you've got to get your landing page with the right copywriting. You've got to get your email sequence with the right copywriting. You've got to have your webinar with the right structure. You've got to have the right nurturing sequence in place. All of those things. You've got to have an attractive offer that's simple to understand and clear and good value and something that people really want to buy. All of those factors take time and they're not all going to be right the first time around. So if people recognize that the webinar is a bit of a journey, it's not going to be an overnight success, provided they know that that's the case and it's going to take a while to get there, all I can say is believe me, the destination is well worth all the hard work because once it's automated and it's converting, it just depends on how much money you can put into your adverts to determine how many results you can get. You put 10 grand in, you're going to get 20 grand out. You put 50 grand in, you're going to get 50, it's getting more out than you put into the whole thing. So as you can see, I'm quite excited about all this because I love webinars, but they do take time and effort. They are, and because they're hard in terms of setting up all the configuration, that's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because it's a deterrent from people doing it, but it means the people that make the effort and do it are ahead of the competition who can't be bothered. So that's the way I pick.
Absolutely. Yeah, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, wouldn't they? Like you say, why not give ourselves the best advantage that we can? Well, Paul,
Absolutely.
this has been absolutely fantastic and really interesting. So, if folks listening want to connect with you or to explore winning with webinars, where should they go? And what's a good way for them to introduce themselves when they reach out to you?
I suppose the first thing to mention is if people, if they do a Google of Paul Jordan webinars, you'll see that I'm on page one of Google quite a lot, which is nice. If they want to get in touch, hopefully we can put a booking link to my calendar in the conversation, the description text below the video here. And all I would say to people, look, I would love to have a call with you. I'm not the kind of, I'm not a hard salesman. You can see that from the nature of the person I am. I love helping people. I think, like yourself said, there's a lot of passion. We're all here to make a living. We all are, but there's a huge buzz that we get when we help people, and we can see that the help that we've given them has helped them become more successful in what they do. That is priceless, and I take huge satisfaction from that. And equally, I would sooner turn somebody away if I think they're not a good fit, if it's not appropriate, because I don't want someone's money unless I know that it's going to benefit them. So anyway, another long answer to a question, but yeah, if they book a link, click on the booking link, book a spot on my calendar. I'd love to have a virtual coffee and have a chat and just see what we can do for them.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put all the details down in the comments as well so that people can easily find that.
Mm.
And yeah, again, Paul, thank you so much. Could literally sit and bang on about this all day with you.
Pleasure. Well, look, Sarah, thanks for inviting me on your podcast. It's been great to be here, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.
Cheers. Bye.